The show is about to start. Thank you for your cooperation. Enjoy the show, and please come back and visit us again.
Woke up, half dressed, still buzzing. Text said I keep it 100. Fuck my boss, text him I ain't coming. Keep it 100. Light another one, I stay blooded. Text 10 dimes, yeah, I kept it 100. You know another night's coming. Yeah, I keep it 100. Keep it 1, 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 keep it Keep it 100.
Oh yeah. It's the 100th edition of the 9 Years podcast. Nick Draper here with Stuart Deacons, keeping it 100 as always. You know, Stu, I don't think any song we've ever kicked off the show with reflects our good selves any less than this one does. But we have made it to a century of episodes, for which we thank all of you that have listened to us over the past few years and given us a reason to spout our interesting, nonsense. Week in, week out, to be fair. We are joined by the founding chairman of AFC Wimbledon this week. Kris Stewart is going to look back over the dying days of Wimbledon FC and the early days of AFC Wimbledon with us. And then, of course, we'll have all the usual, including the return of Abdu Are and a preview of our fixture this weekend. But first, as always, a review of the week just gone and our stunning 1-0 win at Ewood Park. But to start with, a little bit of a left-field big question, I think. Stu, many of our fans, including our good selves, have hailed the performances of George Long this season, claiming we'd be in even more trouble if it wasn't for him. But, realistically, how many points has George actually won us this season? He's won our Man of the Match poll 3 times so far, and we're only in September. But each time he did, for each game he was awarded our Man of the Match, we lost anyway. So, really, I guess my point is, when we have picked up our points this year, we've earned them. With the exception of Gillingham, possibly, where you could say we've thrown points away. But do you see my point there? It seems like we have to play well to pick up points.
Yeah, it's a cracking question to start off with. I think with George Long, when you look at the stats, he's kept 2 clean sheets out of 9 appearances and 11 goals against. Not conceding more than 2 goals in a game, so that's not too bad. But when you look at the goals that we've conceded, I don't really look at any blame. I don't look at any goal and go, he didn't come and get across there. He didn't dive quick enough down to his left or his right. He's recently looked shaky on a few crosses, but that's mainly for the fact that for the first part of the season, everything he come out for, he either punched or held. So I think George Long, he's set a standard now that's quite high, and actually you feel quite safe with him. You don't when a shot's, I don't know, before, nothing against James Shea or anything like that, but you just felt sometimes there was a weakness. I don't tend to see too much of an obvious weakness of him at the moment.
It's fair to say, though, isn't it, that when we talk or when fans mention to us about the points we'd have if it wasn't for George Long, it's a complete cliche, isn't it? Because, as we've said, can you think of the points we've picked up this season? So our 2 draws, Scunthorpe and Gillingham, and then our 2 wins, Blackburn and Doncaster. Can't really say that we've won those games or George Long has won us those points. Blackburn, I think he had that 1 save, which was a great save, but we deserved the win that day. Am I being unfair to other fans?
No, I think you're right. I think, has he done a save that's a match-winning save? I don't know. You could argue he saved, the save he did at Blackburn potentially was the difference between 3 points and a point, so that's a 2-point difference. Has he made a difference of the 2 points? Yes, he has. I think with George Long, it's like anything, isn't it? I think he's that much. He's so much better than what we've had before. No disrespect to any goalkeeper we've had the whole way through.
Ben Wilson, plenty of disrespect.
Of course. But he's so much better than what we've ever had. He's commanding everything that you expect from a goalkeeper, that naturally, when he's on that list, you tend to get, he's voted for heavily. And but no, you're right. I don't think any game has been so outstanding. I'm trying to think of a 0-0 draw now where he was kept us in a game. He didn't really against Gillingham. Scunthorpe, I'm trying to think of Scunthorpe first game of the season. Did he make any match winning or keep us in a game? Not really. So hopefully that's still to come. But we have got a hell of a goalkeeper on our hands, and I don't know about you, but I'm sort of sitting there thinking now, he's out of contract at the end of the season. Can we just do something really early on and make sure he's ours next season as well?
I guess it all depends on money and what other clubs are paying attention to him, I suppose, of which I'm sure there are several at the moment. But anyway, Blackburn then, was that win an example of a game in which we can set ourselves up defensively, as we do very, very well, and then play on the counter-attack? And does that style suit Neil Ardley's and our team's sensibilities? Is that the way that Neil would love? He loves to play that way, so should we be that surprised that we went to Wewood Park and won with a clean sheet?
No, not really. It's one of those ones, isn't it? I think, the performance in the week, I said to you after the Gillingham game that you won't really know how good the Gillingham result is until we go to Blackburn and see what we get there. So, pick up a win against Blackburn, all of a sudden that Gillingham performance now looks a great performance because it seemed to be, hopefully, that turn in the corner, that performance. We took a bit of confidence going into the Blackburn game. We set up well. From what I saw, and obviously you were at the game, but it looked like a 4-3-3, but very much become a 4-5-1 when they had the ball. But the difference is that Kwesi was able to occupy both centre halves this time, and that's the difference because when the ball's coming back so quickly, you're defending for the whole half. Where I didn't feel against Blackburn that we were defending. I didn't feel that we were ever under the cosh or ever allowed Blackburn to get such loaded possession that in the end they were just pushing us back. I would argue that I felt we were reasonably comfortable. I don't know about you at the end of the game, but I suppose it's different when you're there because obviously the crowd are getting on their backs from the first minute, and you're just generally feeling, they're going to score. But I didn't generally think at any point that we were under that pressure of caving in. I don't know how you felt being at the game.
No, I think with about 25 minutes to go, I was quite content that this was going to end, or the game was going to end 1-0, because you just sense it sometimes, and I didn't feel like you say that we were under pressure, and we've been in situations many times down the years where you feel like you worry that we're never going to survive this. Your teams are battering you and hammering at the door, and it was never like that, like you say. I think the key part was possibly that last 10, 15 minutes just before half-time. I think that was the time when you maybe have a little bit of worry. That's when we surrendered a lot of possession, and that's where you think if they score before half-time, then it's a different game completely. But no, I think you're right. I think the defensive side, they got absolutely right. And I know it was, like you say, a 4-3-3, but then Andy Barcham and then Kwesi or Lyle, they were somewhat interchangeable, actually, I thought, on Saturday. Lyle would often play as the one up top, and sometimes he would drift wide and Kwesi would swap, and whoever was out wide would then tuck in. Almost at times, towards, like I say, that end of that first half, you felt like you had a back six almost, with Barcham and Kwesi right on top of the fullbacks. But that was the only time, like you say, and that possibly was also in a little bit of response to, they made a substitution, didn't they? I mean, that tells you what you need to know, that a manager of a home side has made a substitution, a tactical substitution after half an hour.
But let's be fair, right? Mowbray had, if you look at, I don't think Mowbray's a particularly great manager. I've said that to you before. I think he's been very lucky. He's at Coventry. Right, Coventry didn't have loads of money, but how he got the Blackburn gig, I don't know, because that squad he's got is a good squad on paper. I don't think he's using it very well. And he should be doing a lot better. That's their third defeat in 7 games against us. So whilst we're saying, I think some people put it as a performance of the week, let's not kid ourselves. That's their third defeat in 7. So you have to say they're not the greatest team in there, but they've got an abundance of talent, what they can bring in. I just felt for once we had a team that was performing and working for each other. It felt like the Gillingham game. Sometimes, for as much as we say that Lyle runs and harries and stuff like that, it's only good if you do that together. So Lyle can run 50 yards to chase something down. It's no good if Kwesi doesn't back him up or Liam Trotter doesn't go into certain holes. But I felt Kwesi gave them a problem all game. I thought it was his best performance by a mile, and that's not just because he got a goal, although you could argue that the goal gave him that confidence. It's a great finish. Great run, great finish. But if you look back at the actual chances, if you take away the clear-cut chances, we had the most clear-cut chances, and I still think 1-0 flattered Blackburn. I really do. You look at the clear-cut chances.
But you say, Quezzy, whether the goal helped him. The goal is all about him. It's all about him, like you say, doing his work defensively, nipping in to win possession just inside our own half, and then away he goes. I mean, could argue that he had no other option to do anything other than what he did, and then you could even argue slightly fortunate in the way that he's got the second chance after the defenders have blocked him. But it all comes as you say, that hard work, and that was just evident from every single player. And trying to pick 3 players for man of the match this week was very, very difficult.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're right. I think he deserved the luck. You know, when he ran from the halfway line, they backed off, didn't they? They didn't like his pace at all. And when he shimmied in the box, I think he deserved that luck. But, you know, if you look at the chances we had, he had one that the keeper made a great save in the second half, although George Franklin made a run into space behind him. He also had the run from Andy Bartram when he backed him into the box again, and then Parrott had a shot in the end, sort of cleared, didn't he? But there's some real clear-cut chances. Dean Parrott, for me, had his best game by far in the season. You know, was a threat attacking, and also looked like he did his work off the ball, which is all you can ask for Dean Parrott. But you have to say that performance, you know, I said earlier, you know, that Gillingham game now is a much better draw than it looked in isolation after Tuesday night. You know, you and I were a bit like, we've dropped points. But now if you look at the week as a whole, we've had a cracking week, and if we can take that onto Friday, we have had a real smashing week for the season. You know, Neil Ardley's been honest enough to say that he's taken off the shackles a little bit from trying to play overplay. You know, you and I were going to build up to the game on Friday later, but you and I were a little bit concerned of what Wimbledon team would be going into that game on Friday. Whereas now, I'm pretty confident now that we're going to put a performance in the right tempo, and we go in there with a little bit of form, which thankfully we are going into that game.
You say that Neil Ardley's taken the shackles off a little bit, though, but do you think our attack is still a little bit too laboured? By that I mean, if you think of the goals we've scored in League One this season, they've been more moments of individual quality. There've been nothing about perhaps our style of play or a system that's led to them. Is that not fair to say? You think?
Yeah, we haven't. Yeah, so the performances are better for the fact that the tempo's better, and the team shape feels to me a little bit closer. If the system works on people working for each other and believing in a system, believing in your teammate. You know, Gillingham was a start in the right direction. You're right, yeah. The goals we've got are moments of brilliance. Although if you think about the Gillingham game, that's probably the first game we worked together, and we had so many chances, didn't we? But then I think that's because of how poor Gillingham are rather than how good we were. But yeah, I don't think it's gelled yet. The front three haven't gelled, probably because we've not played a regular player together. It looks at the moment that Bartram and Lyle Taylor are the more preferred two at the moment in that 3 formation. It's basically a pick of Cody or Quezzy at the moment, isn't it? But yeah, I think you're right. You know, it's not been solved. There's still a bit to do yet. But I think before in the beginning of the season, when chances were coming, I think they were being snatched at, as if Quezzy didn't think, you know, how many chances are going to get in the game. We're starting to create more chances now. So I'm hoping we won't snatch at those chances as much, and actually Quezzy getting a goal, hopefully that will give him the confidence. Lyle, I feel, needs a goal. Once Lyle gets a goal, I think you'll get him in. I think once Lyle gets one, I think you'll get him in a bunch, just 2 or 3 together. But no, you're right. Yeah, we haven't solved it yet, but we've got more of a chance now the way we're playing than we did if we go back to the Pompey game.
Moving from the forwards to the defence, Will Nightingale, is he now an automatic starter? And why is your answer yes?
Do you know what, with Will Nightingale, he's a very difficult one, isn't he? Do you know what I mean? He's taken his chance very well since Robbo was sidelines after the Pompey hatchet man took him out. I think, do you know what? I think we've all, as Wimbledon fans, and you and I, we love Will Nightingale. We always feel he needs a good run of games. And, you know, I think we see him as that future Wimbledon captain. So what you want with Will, you want him to be selected on form and ability rather than he's one of our own, he's an academy boy, he must go in because he's the academy. I think now the performances now are at a standard where you can see him being a recognised centre-half. And I think Robbo now has got it all to do. You know, Will's taking the opportunity well. Again, it's one of those ones, do you put a experienced pro in against them on Friday, or do you go with the person that's in form? Not funny, but Will knows our history like nobody else. And I think he's a person you play on Friday. I think you'll get a performance out of him. and he probably is an automatic starter now. But then, of course, the headache becomes that we have Darius on the recovery route, and he probably will be knocking at the door to go straight back into the team.
Cool. Right, we are running late as always. We are sounding great, of course. But let's wrap up with that's worked out quite nice, isn't it? Let's wrap this up with GIF wraps, which we did on Twitter this week. So at 9YRS Podcast. If you don't follow us already, please do. These were brilliant this week. Huge response. In fact, I don't think we've had a response as large as this in the past for any of our 3-word reports or anything like that. So thank you to everyone. All the responses we got were fantastic. We won't describe them. Just head to Twitter at 9YRS Podcast and search for hashtag GIFWrap. And then the 16th of September 2017, you'll find our favourite 3. They came from this week, a little name check for the following. Tom Francis at TomFrancis_1. Very much enjoyed that. Had a giggle at that one. Rovers Chat. Shout out to the Rovers Chat fans here. We spoke to Daniel Ainsworth last week on the show, and the Rovers Chat Twitter account, Rovers_chat. They do many things, including a podcast, lots of articles and things like that. Giving a shout out to them because they got involved this week, and we thank them for that. And also, finally, if you follow us on Twitter, you'll already know that Dave Abbott at Ratty75 has already won because of his New Girl GIF that he sent us, which I was very appreciative of. And then on request, we got you don't watch New Girl, do you? Or you've never watched it, have you?
No.
No, you don't know who Cece is, do you?
I haven't got a clue.
No, okay. Just Google that one, okay?
I will do.
Yeah. And I'll leave it there. I'm a big fan of that show and of that particular actress. Right, League One. Elsewhere in League One this week, what other results stood out for you?
Interesting. After our performance against them, interesting would be the word, wouldn't it? The Gillingham win against Charlton. Keeping a clean sheet against Charlton, winning 1-0. Charlton have been doing all right, but Charlton, I just think, still have that performance in them, if you know what I mean. I think they still have that dire performance. And, I haven't watched a full game of Gillingham, but I'm still that's a bit of a surprise result. And Oldham losing 2-1 at home to Shrewsbury. So Shrewsbury continuing their excellent start to the season.
It will never last.
But
it's never going to last.
But whilst it is, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? So
it is quite interesting.
One thing I would say to you is Oldham, I think you might have said this last week, but Oldham have recruited really well in terms of the loan market.
Yeah.
And they've got Craig David?
Craig David.
Sorry? Not Craig David. That's what I keep calling him. Oh, what's his name? I'm doing very well with my knowledge here, aren't I? It is late on a recording here.
We are recording very late, so I'll forgive you, but I very much look forward to Craig David.
Yeah, they got
coming down to us. Yeah.
Craig
Can we just,
David.
We're going to have to rewind that bit, yeah.
Rewind.
There we go. He plays every day of the week.
But yeah, they've done, well, I say, look at that Oldham team. Actually, they've recruited very well, and I think you said that last week. So it's a good win for Shrewsbury, and they're still top of the league. 5 points clear.
Yeah, they only ever win by 1 goal. It will never last.
That's all it takes, Nick.
Yeah, but not over the course of the whole season.
The thing is, I'm not a Shrewsbury fan or have
What?
anything that I like about Shrewsbury.
You're not a Shrewsbury fan?
No, but actually, do you know what? I will be cheering them on now just because I think it's great that you still are dismissing them.
They're too close to Wales for my liking.
The West Midlands, they're based in, aren't they?
It's basically Wales.
Yeah. That's why. And actually, they do a lovely Shrewsbury Flower show as well. Do you know that?
All right, stop the podcast. That's it. It's never getting better than that. There is no way. Last week it was Stuart Ripley. This week it is the Shrewsbury Flower Show.
No. Do you know what? I do know that because I used to have an aunt who lived in Newtown, which is just near Shrewsbury, and they have coming from miles and miles. The Shrewsbury Flower Show. Google it, people. You'll enjoy it.
I'm actually speechless. I don't know what to say. All right, no, I will. I look forward to it. Okay, when did you first find out you were turning into a woman, by the way? Right, your hero of the week.
Kwesi Appiah is my hero because...
That's self-explanatory, really.
He goes something to hold on to, and my villain is more than one person. It's the Blackburn fans. You're stuck in League One, get on with it, stop looking down at teams, you're in loads of debt. I just don't like people that are above their station, and I don't know about you, Nick, but I did say to you that Blackburn has a ground that is not really proportionate to the size of the town. They very much are bankrolled by money and they're in a lot of debt, so I don't think they should be looking down at teams like us, so I'm glad we stuffed them on the weekend.
Fair enough. My hero is probably similar to yours, Dean Parrott. I just think you did mention him earlier, but not a lot of people have been generally talking about his performance on Saturday. But I think it was a fantastic, disciplined performance, and he also showed a lot of quality going forward on occasion. So I think he deserves a mention. And villain Harry Redknapp. Do you know why? He deserved to get sacked. I'm sorry, I'm not normally one to advocate sacking managers, and I still don't, especially this early in the season. It still is wrong of Birmingham to have done it. But for a manager to come out every week say pretty much we've lost, it's because I don't have good enough players, and then he buys a load of players and they lose again, and he's moaning about the players again. It's like, it's your job to manage these players, to make them better and give them a set of tactics that get them to win games. And if you can't keep blaming the players, Harry, you can't just expect it all to come down to opening your checkbook. And the man really irritates me because he's a con. I find the whole Harry Redknapp thing the biggest con ever. Do some coaching and do some proper management for once.
You're listening to these fine gentlemen in their new song, One Horse Town. Available now on iTunes and Spotify.
The 28th of May 2002 is a date that fans of AFC Wimbledon will never forget. For that was the day that it was announced that the Football Association were to allow the old Wimbledon FC to be franchised to Milton Keynes. The idea of reforming the club as a non-league side had already been mooted by this point, and at a meeting in Wimbledon Town Centre just 2 days later, supporters decided to give their support to the new club, organised under the chairmanship of Kris Stewart. Kris joins us now. Kris, when and how did you first hear that the FA's three-man commission had given the green light to the owners of Wimbledon FC to relocate the club?
Well, it's funny you should ask that, Nick, because the FA never announced it. In fact, no one ever announced it. So the first we knew about it informally was the night before from a journalist whose name I can't remember, who called us up and said, "This is our story tomorrow. This is what's happening and this is what the decision is." We weren't, I think, particularly expecting... We were expecting to hear something at some point, but I think we were expecting a different result, at least until a day or so before then. But no, they never announced it. So it was reported... it was probably across the media. It was on radio, it was on TV and so on. But no one actually ever said, this is what has been decided, because nobody wanted to be responsible for the decision. So it was the decision of the Independent Three-Man Commission, appointed by the FA on the request of the Football League. But the FA didn't want to own it, the Football League didn't want to own it, and the Commission wasn't really a thing. It was just three blokes, two of whom are, well, I won't use the word. So there was never an announcement, but we heard about it from a source that we were happy that it, he knew what he was talking about. It wasn't... there wasn't any doubt about it, sort of late evening the night before.
So, help me out a little bit. I've always known the 28th of May as being the date then. So you would have actually found out the day before the 27th. Have I got that right?
Yeah, sort of. I'm not sure how late, but it was, too late to be bothered to do anything kind of thing. It wasn't any point. Except just to say to people that we'd heard that there's going to be a result tomorrow and look out for it, kind of thing.
Okay, it's all a bit of a blur now, of course. I just remember finding out very early. I got the phone call very, very early on what would have been the 28th. So that was the first I heard of it. And I guess I've never really thought about it, to be honest with you. But no, I don't recall, obviously, a formal announcement or anything like that. It was, I got the phone call and then soon enough, everyone knew. And I guess I'd never actually put two and two together to think, no, actually.
Everyone knew, but no one said.
Yeah, never actually thought of
it. And that was kind of one of the reasons some of us ended up inviting ourselves into FA headquarters that morning and having a little sit down for a while. In that kind of, this is pretty awful that this thing was ever suggested in the first place. Uncountably, more awful, if you like, that it's actually been allowed to happen. But you haven't even got the, what it takes to announce it, to actually, say that this has happened. So that was really, I think, what made us. I think we had to push a little bit to get all of us in into FA headquarters, and just sat down in reception and said, "Look, funnily enough, the head of I can't remember his title, but anyway, his name was Nick Coward, which is kind of funny, really."
Sorry, I'm having a flashback to my school days. Hold on.
So we just said, look, you do what you like, really, but we're going to stay here until there's the FA, as the responsible body for English football, says something. And they told us to leave, and said they were calling the police, and we said, go ahead, it's fine, do what you like, but we're not going to go until the FA says something. And then the FA said something, which was, sort of hanging, ringing, not me, Gov, doesn't set a precedent. We're very disappointed, all that sort of thing.
So when we say the journalist leaked it or said that there's a chance that it's going to go against us, was there any other time when you were confident? When did it? I know you said you were expecting a different result. So going through the hearing, were you getting feelers out that it was going Wimbledon's way?
I'm really hard, because all that thinking was in the heads of those three people, and I'm sure they were talking to. Because the Football League didn't even have outside counsel representing it at the commission, so I don't know, and the commission itself didn't have legal counsel, so I don't know what discussions they were having with who, but we weren't getting any feelers from that at all. I mean, the actual day that I gave my evidence to the commission, it was pretty horrific, but it was, there was a chairman, the Raj Parker fella, who was clearly trying to be neutral. Steve Stride was not saying very much at all, really, and Alan Turvey was being reasonably supportive or helpful in the way that he was asking questions, at least. Really, really difficult to get any kind of feeling from that. I think the thing is that we didn't think we'd necessarily win as such, but we thought we'd win that decision. And that they'd appeal, and it would this and that, and at some point, something different would happen. But I don't think. I mean, people have their own memories of how they thought and what they said at the time. My recollection is that we weren't expecting to lose like that at that point, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, Stu, but I think I could look back now and say complacent is probably a fair word to level at me, because I just did not think, like you say, Chris, who was thinking this was a good idea? I could not imagine it ever being given the green light. But anyway, in that final season, building up to that moment, leading up to that, obviously a lot of protests and a lot of things going on. It was a horrible year for pretty much everyone involved in that situation. Did you yourself, because you were leading a lot of campaigning and stuff, did you yourself have many personal dealings with Charles Koppel during that final season? Did you have much sort of face-to-face interaction? Was it
far too many?
Was it really that
probably
much?
Well, no. I mean, one would be many too many.
Yeah, fair point, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I probably maybe half a dozen, I suppose. Okay. Just thinking about it. Actually, no, maybe a few more. Somewhere between half a dozen and a dozen, I suppose. Including meetings of the Woof or whatever it was called. The Wimbledon. Do you remember the Wimbledon Official Fans Forum?
The Wimbledon Fans Forum. Yes, I remember that. Was that not the famous? One of those meetings was the famous one where he said he'd sell the club for £1, and then on receipt of £1,
changed his mind.
Yeah.
Yes, that was one of those. We had Merton Council taking us round sites in Merton. That was another one. I had, I think a couple of us had lunch with him and his big German mate.
Oh yeah, yes, Matthias
Hauger, something like that. Yeah, that sort of name.
Yeah.
Now there was. You see, this is one of those things. There was a Wetherspoons, wasn't there? In Morden. You may not be Morden. Anyway, I'm pretty. Yeah, there was. What happened to it? Where did it go? Is it Iceland? Is that anyway?
Yeah, it's where Iceland is now. Yeah.
Okay. So we had lunch with, I think, in there maybe, or somewhere else, and a couple of meetings with the council and with Roger Casali, the Wimbledon MP, and so on, including the one where a few times. Too many really.
Did he always just toe the party line? Did you ever sense there was him wavering at any point, an admission perhaps that he was doing what he was told, kind of thing, and actually did?
I know he really got upset when you called him the monkey rather than the organ grinder. He really did. That's one we did. He particularly. So when I'm pretty sure that he had nothing, at stake except potential upside, if you like. I never got the impression that he had the sort of money. Anyway, who knows? That's speculation, isn't it? I think he was hoping to make money out of it. I don't think he necessarily lost, actual cash of his own. Yeah, no, he would. In the commission itself, when I was giving evidence, I suggested that he was, I can't remember the word. I'd probably use a much more polite word than, hired lackey. But he wasn't happy about that ever. The only time I kind of got him to say anything that he probably shouldn't have said, but it was in a pub, and it was me and him and Matthias. I said, I can't remember exactly what he said, but I said, stop, talking rubbish. You know that once you get up there, it'll be, a Milton Keynes club, and you'll call it Milton Keynes. You'll change the name, blah 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 blah. And he said, yeah, you're right, of course. And that was the only time, and clearly, when there was no one else around to hear it, that's the only time that I ever heard him say anything off message, if you like. Yeah.
But you say, there was some good to come out of it. Obviously, the great thing that came out of it was AFC Wimbledon. The reformation and everything that the club has achieved since that day you can't put it into words. It is phenomenal. Those early days, we're talking the very, very early days. I know we spoke to you back in January about Sutton and things like that. We're not going to revisit those. But getting the club set up and started and things like that, a lot of hard work from yourself and Ivor Heller. The work of Mark Jones, though, and Trevor Williams and Louise Carton-Kelly was vital in those times as well. And what did those guys do to help make AFC Wimbledon a reality? A lot of things I think that people don't really either know about, or partly through choice of those individuals, of course, as well.
Yeah, sure. Not everyone has the ego that Ivor and I have, and enjoys talking to people and so on and so on. There's lots and lots of things that lots and lots of people did, but I think I would probably pick. So if I said Mark, what did Mark do? Mark made people believe that it could happen. He did lots of things. He designed the crest and the kit and et cetera. Trev. So at that point, Trev put a huge amount of time and effort into the club after then as well. But for me, at that point, there was just a reality there that I think those of us with kind of big ideas and enjoying the big picture and all that kind of thing really needed someone who actually had an idea of what a non-league football match looked like, what a non-league football player looked like, who these people were and how they were and where to find them and all of those sort of things. And I think, again at that point, that was Trev really, and Lou. You mentioned Lou was the other person you mentioned, and I think that Lou obviously again didn't create the trust on her own. But I don't think it's one of those things that people make. Sometimes I worry that things like this sound a bit pompous, but we made history. We made some history. But people make history, but they don't make it in circumstances of their own choosing. And I think it isn't about me or Lou or Ivor or Eric or Mark or whatever. But all of those individuals are actually important. So we didn't invent the club on our own. However, in those moments when things are changing, the efforts of some individuals can make a difference in how things pan out. And I think the incredibly hard work that Lou led in building the trust to a point where again, it felt like a real thing. People could imagine it being the owner of the club. I could imagine it. It wasn't. So when we said we're building this club and it's going to belong to the trust, people didn't think that was ridiculous. People thought, of course, that makes perfect sense. So helping to create that common sense, I think, that was massive as well.
I mean, in that first season, you talked about when we didn't start so well, especially after we'd had that week, we lost to Feltham and then we went away to Wallingford in that game, which no one who was there will ever forget, and we lost. Yeah, yeah, that was a big one. But did you worry at that time that our progress was going to stall? Was it a case of you looked at that first season and you thought promotion would have been vital for us? It didn't turn out to be the case, of course, but at the time
there was a worry because of the restructuring that was going on, and the opportunity. Essentially, if we'd finished first or second, we could have got promoted, and that would have actually could effectively have ended up with being 2 promotions with the restructuring that came later. Compared to where we would be if we didn't go up. So I think we did sort of think that was maybe a bit of a blow, and as you rightly point out, it turned out not to be. But I do think, there was a sense of this. There was certainly a disappointment. I mean, we enjoyed the season. I think people generally enjoyed the season. We quite enjoyed, having a party at the end of the season. But yeah, I think I think partly that was because it really wasn't going to happen. It was pretty clear that there was a few times where we kind of kidded ourselves that we might be able to, make up the gap, but I don't think it was particularly realistic, really. So I guess we had plenty of time to get used to the idea.
And that first season, aside from the big decision to purchase Kings Meadow, which is a whole is a can of worms that perhaps we won't open just at this very moment in time. I guess one of the other big decisions, actually the biggest decision probably came the following season, but we appointed Terry Eames as our manager very early on in the formation of AFC Wimbledon. And then obviously we had the incident in, what would it have been, February of the second season, where we had to part company with him. So this was was he making illegal payment or not, payments that he shouldn't have been doing to players, or was he offering these payments? What was the actual situation?
Well, the Terry Eames thing, yeah. So I was out for dinner for my birthday. So that would be the 9th of February. I was out for dinner in Wimbledon with my other half and some friends. And I got a phone call from Trev, which was a bit annoying, but not the most surprising thing in the world. I think one of the things you learn very quickly about that game is that it's 24/7, and you either do it 24/7 or bugger off and do something else. Anyway, so yeah, Trev called me and said, I've had a call from, and I honestly can't remember which of them it was, but youth team manager, reserve team manager, can't remember exactly. And he says he's been sacked. Terry sacked him because the board's cut his budget, and all the youth teams are being canned, and what's going on. So that kind of put a bit of a dampener on my birthday celebration, to be honest. And my answer was, I have no idea what's going on at all. Maybe I'll try and find out. So we talked to some people, and it seemed clear that some people had been let go from the club on the football side on the basis of some kind of claim that there was a restriction going on budget-wise, and that plans for in particular plans for youth teams had been canned, which wasn't true at all. Just simply wasn't at all. There's nothing at all. There's absolutely no. It's just, I mean, and that's what kind of made it all the stranger. Was kind of like the only discussion we'd had recently. Eric and I had sat with Terry in a pub around Tattenham Cornerish sort of area, and talked about plans for youth teams and so on, and everything had been pretty good as far as either of us had understood. So we spent a bit of time talking to these people who'd been to go and what's been said. We asked Terry to come in. We asked him about stuff. He didn't give a very good explanation. We suspended him. We carried on talking to people. We asked Terry for a hearing. We had a hearing. And whilst we were talking to people whilst Terry was suspended and there was all sorts of horribleness going on whilst Terry was suspended, but that's, part of the gig, I guess. We had players saying to us, well, if Terry's sacked, what happens to my bonus? And we said, what bonus? So that was kind of the uncovering of the second can of worms, about payments to players that we weren't, which had been discussed, which we weren't aware of. But that isn't part of what we discussed with Terry. So whilst that was a significant and serious thing, and we had to explain it to people, it wasn't part of the initial reason why we were having a discussion with Terry and why we suspended him.
Relations with Terry ever sort themselves out in the end? Because I know at the time, I remember he really obviously cut himself away really from the club completely. I think he came back for one game, maybe towards the end of that season. But was that it for him as far as AFC Wimbledon's concerned?
Yeah, I've heard that he was at a couple of, a game or two, sometime later as well. But yeah, as far as I've not spoken to him.
Difficult decisions you mentioned there. Possibly your most difficult was the decision to stand down. You stepped down in 2006.
Yes, September 2006. Yeah.
What led you to that decision?
Oh, well, everything from that happened before that in my life. Clearly. So there's short-term stuff, which is just having had enough of this particular row or that particular row, whatever it is, which in the scheme of things is never particularly important. And then there's more fundamental things and how those things interact with each other. So I think that I'd reached the point where I realised that I didn't want to do the job because of what the job entails. And I think the worst thing for me about what the job entails was doing things that I didn't think were the right thing to do on a personal level, because they did seem like the right thing to do on a corporate level, if you like. And corporate, I don't mean that in a businessman sense. I just mean in a collective sense. So the club and me didn't see eye to eye all the time, and that's quite hard when you're in charge of the club. So I had to stop. There were some things that I probably won't talk about that precipitated it, happening that day as opposed to another day. But that's not really the thing. The thing is that there's only so many personal compromises you can make, and that's not to say that's wrong. It's just that you can't. It's one of those. If it was my club, I'd do things differently, and of course you would. And if it was your club, you'd do things. If it was just your club, if you were the owner in a sort of I don't know, Sam Hammam sense, you'd do things differently. And sometimes that gets too far apart, and sometimes there's just too many occasions where you're quite reasonably expected to do things that you just don't want to do yourself. And so, then it's time to stop.
I'm trying to relate it to, perhaps you'd look at my situation. You feel like in your role as you would be chairman of the football club, a degree of autonomy that I guess at this particular football club you don't have. It is that sort of teacher/head teacher sort of dynamic where you think, I'm going in every day because I'm going to do things the way I want to do it, and actually you don't always get that. And I'm just... Is that making sense? Is that sort of the situation you'll find yourself in?
Yeah, no, it is, absolutely. So, I would, I don't know, what would I do? I'd have lower prices. I'd not speak to the Sun. I don't know. There's 1,000 things that, some of which are tiny little things which don't matter, and some of which are massive things that put at your heart. But yeah, I mean, so and everybody has to make compromises at work, but there's work, and I find it much easier to make compromises at work when I'm a wage slave than in that position, like you say, where you are kind of, to an extent, embodying some or attempting to embody some of what the club is, and at the same time not trying hard not to be seen, trying hard not to in any way mould it to your own shape.
So when you sat down, Kris, was it an easy decision for you, or was it one that you kept thinking over? Did it take a bit of time for you to make a decision, or did you? Because obviously, you think about it, it's 4 years you've been involved, a hell of a lot you did in that time. Was it easy to walk away from it, or was it something you just kept playing with and eventually went with it?
Actually, making a decision was relatively short. It didn't take very long at all. But I think it's I don't know if I think it's just sometimes happens to you that you start thinking about something in a slightly different way, and you realise that there's a decision that effectively you've already made, that effectively you know what the decision is, and you can obviously go over it, think about it, and test it out with friends and people you respect. But I think once you start in that situation, once I started to say it to myself, I realised that there was no real choice, that it was time to stop. And that may be a little bit past time, by some months or whatever, but not by a very long time. But that became very obvious to me very quickly, and I think so. It wasn't agonising in that sense. It was very difficult. And a massive wrench, but it wasn't. I didn't agonise over the decision.
Things
itself.
like you say, more maybe ethical decisions. For example, the Sun. We'll take the Sun as an example. Do you think that's something? I think in the early days of AFC Wimbledon, there was, could I say, a confusion, or I don't know if that's the right word, but I know that there was quite a strong element of our fan base that viewed us as more than just a club that's been set up to keep the name Wimbledon alive, that had wider, or should have taken on a wider role in football in terms of the way we go about things. I'm trying to think now, for instance, in the modern version of the club, today's version of the club, dealing with agents or something that I know Eric is fiercely opposed to, and the payments and stuff like that. Do you think that in the early days that sort of idea wasn't pushed strongly enough, and had you wished it had been? Do you think we prioritise getting back into football? Did that become the overreaching aim when, in fact, in those early days, it perhaps wasn't as much?
I don't know. I mean, the counterfactuals are fascinating and good fun to play with, but it's really hard to. I mean, but they're also impossible, obviously, by definition, pretty much. I mean, I think that. Even today, I think that, if you take AFC Wimbledon from, 28th of May 2002 to today, you have to say it has been more than a football club. It has done more than simply playing football for money, if you like. I mean, that's so even the disillusioned have to accept, I think, reasonably should accept that there's been more to it than that. The question really is, how much more has there been, and could there have been more, and should there have been more? I'm one of those who thinks that yes, there could and should, but you have to, and at the time I had to, continue to think that whilst you're in a leading role, the whole point of AFC Wimbledon was for me that it would be a collective enterprise. Effectively controlled by those taking part. And so whilst my opinion or Eric's opinion or Ivor's opinion is interesting, it shouldn't matter any more than yours, Nick or Stuart. And when you're in a leading role, it's very hard to do that. And some people in those roles. Try harder than others. Some people think it's more important than other people do, but I think that in the end, I suppose it comes down to, first of all, there's no pure. We don't live in a pure world. You can't have a pure enterprise. It doesn't. It's a, if you like, a logical impossibility. You can't operate within this world that we live in, and keep true to all of your the best possible principles at all times to the fullest extent. That isn't possible. What often happens is that a compromise becomes the reason for another compromise, and that does happen. And quite often you'll get an argument that says, well, you do this, so why wouldn't you do that? And effectively you can end up arguing from a position where you have no founding principles or guiding principles, if you like. And I think that's kind of the other extreme as well, and I think that's equally dangerous. But together we've plotted the course that we've plotted over the 15 years, and it's been essentially the joint enterprise of us. While there've been people in leading positions, they've been in leading positions because we've decided, allowed, encouraged, whatever that to happen. We've all had together the opportunity to make all the changes, any changes that we wanted to make. So the club that there is today is the result of our collective effort.
You have today. What's your relationship now with the club? You've got season tickets?
Nah, not a
season. Okay. So have you been down to watch us this season or not?
No.
Are you intending to?
No. I don't know, really. I really don't know. I'm kind of the biggest problem for me is that I'm not happy or excited about the thing that everyone's happy and excited about, and that just makes for a difficult situation. And you don't want to be Cooper. So people are obviously happy and excited about what's happening down at Plough Lane, and I'm not, and I don't want to have an argument about it particularly because it's pointless and upsetting for everyone. So it's probably at the moment more easily avoided.
You say that, but it's no less valid than anyone, as you say, anyone else's opinion.
It's completely valid. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, the thing is, Nick, I'm absolutely right. I'm 100% right. Don't get me wrong.
It's just that
I have absolutely no doubt about my opinion whatsoever. However, having done my best to put forward, over the years, my opinions, the club, and that's the collective, the collective enterprise that it is, has decided to do a couple of things that I can't really cope with, and so I'm not going to persuade it to not do that. So all that happens is, I could have a row with some people that I quite like. Apart from that, or I could not.
Is it?
It's a bit difficult to avoid. It's a subject that's quite difficult to avoid.
Yeah. Is it more to do?
And also, people I haven't spoken to, quite naturally have an expectation that of a particular point of view, and people, want to join you, want you to join them in celebrating something or being excited about something or whatever. And it's just, it's not a great situation for anybody. You just, when you just say, nah, actually, that thing you're really excited about, it's all horrible. That's not great, is it?
It's your issue, I suppose. I'm trying to think of one of a better word, really. More to do with what we've done with Kings Meadow than it is the move back to Wimbledon, or are you uncomfortable with where we're going as well?
Oh, okay. So I mean, I think that all of these things are about, the situation you're in, the timing you're in, and so on and so on. I mean, same situation 30 years ago might have been different. I think one of the most important things facing London and people in London at the moment is the housing crisis, and I think that all we're doing is we're being a small part of making that worse, and that sits quite badly with me. But primarily, yes, I think that what we have done to Kingstonian is unconscionable, and that that says nothing about what Kingstonian do, what Kingstonian are, what Kingstonian people have or haven't done, or said or not said over however more long a period. It's nothing to do with them. What we've done is just unacceptable to me, and given it's unacceptable, I can't accept it.
With you and football in general, have you fallen out of love with it a little bit? Everything about it, from top down, from Chelsea and Manchester United all the way down?
I mean, the short answer is yes, but the slightly longer answer is that having a Wimbledon that I felt comfortable with helped to make football more of a place, a thing that was okay to be part of. And if you can think about things as on the one side, the awfulness of Chelsea, and on the other side the righteousness of Wimbledon, then there's a yin and there's a yang, and it goes some way towards balancing that out. When your Wimbledon is taking Chelsea's money to screw Kingstonian, that kind of messes up that balance. It kind of falls out of balance a little bit. And so it makes the whole thing a bit more difficult to enjoy, I suppose.
Okay, Jimmy Abdu's suspension is over, and he has used his time very prudently whilst he's been unable to play for us, because he's been travelling around the country meeting various ex-Wimbledon players. So, Stu, this week, Jimmy is going to talk to us about a player he went to meet. He thought he was going to meet somebody called Carolyn Keane, but then he soon realised his mistake, a mistake made on many, many levels, actually, but... Yes, Carolyn Keane is your first clue.
What? Carolyn Keane?
Yeah. Carolyn Keane, yes, is your first. It's very cryptic, this clue. This is the most cryptic of cryptic clues I've ever done.
And of course, my strength is cryptic clues, isn't it?
Yes, well, I saw you completing the Times crossword the other week against Jimmy.
Never. I ain't got a foggiest.
Okay, just for the fun of it, just yell out any ex-Wimbledon player's name.
Well, it's got to be a K in it, isn't it? I can't even think. F and a Coke.
It doesn't have to have a K. F and a Coke. Great. No, it's nothing to do with F and a Coke. But anyway. All right, well, actually saying that, this player that Jimmy met is a striker.
Okay.
He scored in 25% of his Wimbledon appearances. I'm just double-checking the maths on that one. Yes, that is correct. 25% of his Wimbledon appearance. Second, perhaps only, to Michael Roots in the list of best goals-to-games ratio for the club.
Which probably means he didn't play many games.
Well, I'm just thinking also, there's probably players... I thought maybe Martin Carthy, for example, he probably had a goals-to-games ratio not dissimilar from someone like Michael Roots either, but 25% is going to be fairly high on the list, isn't it?
25%. I'm going to go for something really random. I'm thinking of someone who didn't play many games, but did score. I'm going to go for something like Nick McDonald.
Oh, that's a good name to pull out of the hat. Nick McDonald. Okay. Final clue then. This player signed for Wimbledon in 2011.
Okay. Oh, okay.
He quite literally had more clubs than a pack of cards.
Qaid Mohammed.
Is that your final answer?
Yeah.
It's good, but it's not right.
Damn you.
That was a good answer, though. There's some good names you've come out with there, actually. But no.
Who can forget Nick McDonald? was involved in our Staines, the winner, not winner at Staines, but involved in that team that got promoted at Staines.
He did indeed. He also knocked us out of the playoffs the season before. But anyway,
yeah.
Anagram?
Yeah, go for it.
Throb weed on rug.
What?
Throb weed on rug.
2011. So that was. So that was the conference.
6 years ago.
So that was a conference winning season or the League Two season. So that would have been. Who did we sign that summer? Jack Midson would have been him. I don't know. He's stuck with this year. This week. Might as well stump me. I don't like it. I don't like Jimmy being back. Can we go back to the other game? Jimmy, get another suspension.
You've been doing all right with the Abdu I use, but no, this week.
I'm not sure this one.
No, I should tell you, it is Drew Broughton.
Oh, what a connection! I should have fought this week, shouldn't I? Damn, I should have been a bit more with it, shouldn't I?
Yeah.
But did he actually score 25% of our goals? Because officially, some people don't recognise that he scored any.
Well, some people don't, but then some people have got issues. He scored twice in 8 games for us, yes. The Carolyn Keane reference, by the way, this is how obtuse this whole clue was. Carolyn Keane was the pseudonym that the authors of the Nancy Drew novels took. So yeah, Drew, see?
Me and my books, I would have got that.
If it was an audiobook, you might have read it.
Or listened to it. So Drew scored 1 at Tamworth, if I remember properly.
Yes.
And he scored at home, if I remember properly.
Do you want some amazing trivia, which I hope is correct? And I'm sure if it's not, people will correct me, because this is coming totally off the top of my head.
Yep.
But the second goal I think he scored for us was against Altrincham at Kings Meadow. And do you know what else is historically significant about that win over Altrincham?
Go for it.
The last time a Wimbledon player scored a competitive hat-trick.
Who was the hat-trick person?
Who was the hat-trick person?
Yeah. Oh dear, this is the most. And this is 100 podcast, people, and you can tell we've got more professionals we've gone through.
I tell you, yeah, this is why this podcast is going on for like 2 hours this week. I'll give you 3 guesses. Our promotion season from the conference. Who's got a hat trick?
Oh, Mr. Kedwell.
Yeah, Danny Kedwell. Yeah, 4-1 against Altrincham. I'm pretty sure that was when Drew Broughton scored, and I'm pretty sure that's the last time we had a hat trick.
And it wasn't a great goal either. I remember properly. It was a bit of a bundled goal, but yeah, Drew Broughton. Who can I forget about? How can I forget about him this week?
Of this week, of all weeks, yes, because we are playing them this week. We could talk for hours about this game, but we've gone so late on the show this week, Stu, that I don't think it's possible.
That's good.
Because, yeah, so what should we talk about this game? We just hope, basically, all the arrangements are the same as last season. We hope the results are the same. We hope the atmosphere is the same. And the only thing I'd say is this season it feels a little bit more like there's an air of importance about the result, not just because it's them, but because of our form and the league. Do you know what I mean? I think it has consequences wider than just the significance of beating them. Do you think that's fair? Yeah,
Joe, it's interesting, isn't it? You know, the game's coming up.
It really is.
Oh, really interesting. We are recording this late, so I'm tired. Yeah, I was chatting to a friend who said, will it have the same intensity as it did last season? I think it will. I think it may reduce by 1% each time, but the result is massive. I think Neil Hardy knows that. They're on rubbish point. I looked at, very quickly, I looked at their team. I've looked at their recruitment. It ain't that great. It looks like the money's drying out there, which is great news. I really am confident we're going to beat them, and I hope we smash them, if I'm being truthful. But we all behave ourselves and all go home happy.
What's your score prediction?
3-0.
Blimey. I'm going to go for 0-0. I'm going to think it's going to be very tight and nervy, and they'll just cancel each other out in the end. Just that feeling. But I hope I am wrong. Updates will be available on Twitter and Instagram. I'm kind of getting a bit bored of saying this. At 9YRS Podcast. Do you think there are people listening that actually think we're called that? They think, do you listen to that 9YRS Podcast that we keep referring to? Anyway,
probably.
Maybe. We hope there will be Facebook Live videos as well to keep you posted with everything that's going on, just as long as Stu hasn't been arrested for attacking a Milton Keynes fan. And if you want to see those, make sure you like us on Facebook. Facebook.com/9YRS Podcast. And very quickly, Stu, no, we haven't got time really for this. Just pick a game from Saturday in League One. There are some very interesting fixtures this week in League One. Which one has taken your notice?
Shrewsbury versus Blackburn.
Stop going on about Shrewsbury.
Hey, you've got to see how they're going to do. Blackburn, will they respond from our defeat last week, or will Shrewsbury keep their 5-point lead at the top?
I think Blackburn will win 3-0. Plymouth Doncaster is my pick because they're both doing rubbish, and Doncaster, I think, are going to be in a big, big relegation battle this season from what I've seen from them. Ladies team, they keep winning. 4-1 win over Luton Town. I think Luton Town were generous.
Go on the ladies.
Yeah, come on the ladies. Thanks to goals from Katie Stanley, Caroline Bisson, and 2 this week from Kelly Jade Whelan, who seems to score every week.
Friend of the show.
They host, yes, hopefully we'll be catching up with Kelly soon as well. They host Actonians today, if you're listening to this on Thursday the 21st, at 7:45pm at Sutton United at Gander Green Lane. So again, if you are about, and if you can make it down, it is free entry. Go down and support the ladies who are still doing very, very well at present. Right, off we go. Thank you very much for joining us on our 100th edition, this potentially bumper edition, depending on how much editing I can get done. Because at the moment, this is somewhat of an epic. It's like a WWE episode of Raw or something. It's gone on that long. But anyway, please remember to like us and subscribe to us if you haven't already on either iTunes or YouTube, and leave a comment on our website if you are listening through there, 9yrspodcast.org. And on that note, thank you very much for joining me, Stu.
No problem.
And thank you for listening. Thank you for listening. And join us next week. We'll be talking to Roy Hodgson to see if he really prefers Iceland to Sainsbury's. Alexa Bliss, bag first, milk last, and we will speak to you again next week.